kanta kaste putraha samsaroyamativa vichitraha kasyatvam kaha kuta ayataha tatvam chintaya tadiha bhrataha. Kate kanta kaste putraha samsaroyama tiva vichitraha kasyatvam kaha kuta ayataha tatvam chintaya tadiha bhrataha. So very lovingly he says, oh brother, the kind of affection a guru gives to his shishya, he's calling us brother, means that affection, that pure love is seen here. So the question, you may say, I don't need to know because I know who is my wife. That will be a serious problem if you don't know who is your wife, who is your son. So don't take it literally. It's a philosophical significance, this question. So who is your wife? Kate kanta. Kaste putraha. Who is your son? Samsaro yamativa vichitraha. Supremely wondrous indeed is this samsara. The word samsara is terrestrial attachment or any entanglement. Of whom are you? From where have you come? Oh brother, reflect on that truth iha, here. Now, how many of us are concerned and bothered with these questions? How many of us have sleepless nights over these unanswered questions? Where have I come from? Why have I come here? Where am I going to go? When am I going to go? None of these have any answers. Who are you? You may, when I ask you, who are you? You're only describing about and about yourself, but you do not know who you are. Because you do not know who the reality, the core of your personality. You're only giving me your name, your status, your position, your citizenship. You're giving everything about it, but you do not know who you really are. So these are pertinent questions. And not to ask these questions only talks about your complacency or indifferent to the truth or the reality of life. Matthew Arnold conveys the same spirit very beautifully. He says, Matthew Arnold says, life is like an arrow. Life is like an arrow shot in darkness, flutters in light for a while, and disappears again in darkness. Life is like an arrow shot in darkness, flutters in light for a while, and disappears again into darkness. You do not know where it has come. You do not know where it's going to go. And there's a momentary time where you see its presence. And that's life. That's your life, that's my life. So you got to ask these questions because your life has a purpose. My life has a purpose. And you can only fulfill the purpose by inquiring this. You may not have an answer, but you must start inquiring. That's why he says you must reflect on that truth here. Don't get carried away with your short sojourn, your short passage here. Now, the first question he asks her by saying, who is your wife? Now, this verse is talking about our intellectual bondage or intellectual attachment. Verses 6 and 7 spoke about attachment to the body and attachment to the mind subsequently. This verse is attachment to the intellect. Now, wife, no, metamorphically, philosophically, we're saying wife is symbolic that you look up to for comfort. So when wife means what you look up to for comfort or what you are attached to in the world. That's what wife symbolizes. All right. Like, what are you wedded to? You're wedded to your, what are you all wedded to? You're wedded to your wife. In that sense, what are you wedded to in life? Arunji? In life, what is one wedded to?
Your own beliefs and your own values, I guess, to some extent also.
Values and beliefs. But during the course of one's life, when we say metamorphically, wife is that which you're attached to. What does one get attached to?
When you mean
Yeah, Arunji, don't have to look at your wife. You can just look at me and answer, please. Huh?
attachment. I'm just trying to understand the question, actually. I'm sorry.
No problem. I mean, I can understand.
Perhaps my wife can answer this better than me. So,
So you mean to say the question is applicable even to wives? Wives are attached to what? To husbands. So it's only.
I guess it's kind of difficult, but it's just to the fact that your partner or your spouse, whether it's a wife or husband, gives you the comfort that you need, and you're also attached to their personality and their beauty, I suppose, and all of those things, right?
Not to be taken just to the personality. So therefore we are expanding, as I've said, is metamorphic. It's more symbolic. So if you were to take wife or the spouse or husband here, is something which you get attached to. So in the course of one's life, what does one develop an attachment to? Why I ask that is, the next when he says, who is your son? Son is that who looks up to you for comfort, which means it is a product of your attachment. So wife means what I am attached to. Son means the products of my attachment. So so philosophically we can answer. That's why I'm asking, So if we can mention one or two, what does one develop an attachment to, and what's the outcome of that? For example, if I'm attached to my business, if I'm attached to my work and business, the product of that attachment to business is, what could you say, Arunji?
The output, from the business, I suppose, the profits that you make.
The profit, the success, the name and
Success.
fame and the glory you get. So this is the products of your attachment. You see this?
Right.
So this is the angle we got to examine these two questions. Who is your wife? Who is your son? That which you're attached to, and that which are the products of your attachment. What you look up to for comfort and what someone else looks up to you for comfort. Now, can we expand on this? What else that we are attached to? Now, the beauty of this text is it makes us think originally. It starts lending its perception so that you start questioning or examining life from a totally different angle. And that's the beauty of lending our ears to these scriptures. We are able to think from their perspective. We are getting a glimpse of their wisdom, which in our day-to-day life we don't get into this mindset at all. The hope is that we will think this way so that you examine it in a different perspective. All right. Anybody else? Seduji?
We are attached to because we are dependent on them, and it is selfishness that makes us feel attached to. We are for comforts and for everything we are dependent.
Yes. But my question is, can you just give a quick list what all you're wedded to in life? Mickey ji, I respect your pause, Sethuraman ji.
Thank you, Guruji. Well, you mentioned work already. The other one is sport, some sport or some pursuit, and the son parallel there would be the lower score, or lower handicap, or lower better performance. And these days I'm struggling to think of any benefit, but I am wedded to my phone. And I try to get out of it. And I'm just like spending hours on the phone, and it's just nothing good is coming out of it. So
yeah, the new thing in our lives is the phones, isn't it? We are wedded to it, yeah. So you don't know what's the product of that?
well, there's quite a bit of good. There's a lot of entertainment, news, etc. But it's
now the next line is, extremely wondrous is this terrestrial attachment. Samsaro yamativa vichitraha. It is so wondrous that anybody without a sane intellect will not stand a chance. He'll get charmed and get carried away and get lost in his attachment. That is the beauty, that is the power of this world, he says. You know? Extremely wondrous is this world where you develop an attachment. So it is difficult. It's not impossible. You've got to be extremely careful that you don't get attached. Extremely wondrous. Samsaro yamativa vichitraha. Kasyatvam kaha kuta ayataha. Whose are you? Who are you? Where have you come? You know, interestingly, as we all know, we are all born independent. We come alone. And one day we all have to live alone. But yet, in this short span of life that we call, all what we have developed is a mental bondage. That's the power, he says. Thanks, Hariji, for that beautiful reference. And I will quote that and I'll conclude. We'll come back to this verse again for a quick reference and we'll move on the following week. The famous words of Shakespeare that all the world is a stage and all men and women are mere players. They have their exits and entrances. Means all of us have come with a purpose to play our role, and the best way you play a role is to have that attitude of detachment. And the biggest test to that attitude of detachment or to develop detachment is in areas of your attachment. You can be unconcerned to people who you have nothing to do with. But can you have that attitude of unconcern, which is sattva, to areas where you have most attachment to, with your near and dear, as he says, your wife and son, symbolically to say where you have your attachment to. There you should be detached. That's where you will really, really find you are tested. Just play a role, come and go. Yes, yes, sir.
All this makes a lot of sense, but how we apply all this to our real life is not very easy. What are the tools that we can use? Because it's a constant struggle, I think, to think about detachment all the time. It's a very elusive theory. Is there any person or anybody that has even come close to realizing the detachment?
So it remains elusive until one has a vision to look at it from that eye. As the saying goes, only a Milton can understand a Milton. Only a man of detachment can understand what detachment is and can see who is detached and who isn't. Throughout the Shastras, the Gita, and the scriptures, it is said, Yah pashyati, sa pashyati. Yah pashyati. He who sees it, he sees it. Now, I can understand your pertinent question that it's rather beautiful, but then how do I put to practice? And that's where, in fact, the end of the verse, he said, you've got to reflect on the truth here. So the knowledge alone is of no use unless and until the knowledge is put through a process of transformation. You have to allow the knowledge to go through a metamorphosis, a process where it reflects, the knowledge translates itself into wisdom.
Correct.
And when that process is not done, information remains as information. It doesn't lend the perception. And once you don't have it, you see a great dichotomy. You see a great disparity between knowing it and living it. And then it's very elusive, because I know it, yet I do not live it, because we have not subjected the knowledge to the process of reflection. Just like the food you have eaten, the system puts it through a process of digestion, assimilation, and then the excerpt, the rasa of that is circulated in the body and gives you vitality, health, and energy. But imagine the food it's eaten is not accepted by the system. What would happen? You would have constipation, or you would have diarrhea, you would have something unsettling you. You become, in fact, weak. You lose your health. So the knowledge of wisdom has to be absorbed, has to be accepted, has to be reflected, has to be examined. And that is the process. When you do this on a regular basis, on a daily basis rather, if you do that day in and day out, the Shastras say varam varam, again and again you got to visit these ideas so that you are able to embrace them wholeheartedly. So thus these thoughts start driving you whenever you get into any mode of action. And once this thought becomes stronger, it naturally translates into action, sir. I ask you, what is the next thing you would do? Irrespective of what you would be doing, depends on what is the next prominent thought in your head, isn't it? For example, let's say it's supper time for you all there, and you're hungry. You would go and have your supper. That's the most powerful thought. You would say everything else can wait. A couple of calls have come in the last hour or so. No, I'll attend to it later. The most powerful desire takes over and guides you, isn't it? Similarly, now I'm only talking with little experience, that all what we do is to consolidate these ideas. The wisdom belongs to them. It is the wisdom of the Mahatmas. Our job is to make it our own. Now it is only information, and you will only make it your own through this process of self-inquiry, reflection, and a constant reveling in these ideas. It's like a musician who's constantly reveling in these ragas and talas. All the time he's into listening to this music. He becomes a musician. But if you also allow yourself to consciously embrace these ideas, examine and question and reflect, you will find them very pertinent, very relevant to your lives. And undoubtedly, unknowingly, you will start embracing these ideas. I'm only giving you the process. Sadly, I can't do it for you, nor can anyone do it for me. But each of us have to embark on this journey of self-transformation. So it is not elusive, sir. It is a part where you and I have to live. And we owe it to ourselves that we have to live to bring the beauty and live to the grandeur of a true human, which is to live a life of detachment. So let's not leave it to the textbooks and classrooms like this. How do we take it out beyond the classrooms? I keep saying your real sadhana, your real test is outside the class, not within the class. All right, Ji, please think about it, okay?
Can I say something, Guruji?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
This is a very pertinent question. What this gentleman asked just now is that this knowledge is presented, and we have read it many times, we have heard it through different channels, but we don't take it into our life, and neither can we reflect on it on its own. But I think what drives is that our experience in life, that whatever we have tried to do, we have not had that peace that we are looking for, that soul satisfaction that in the early stages of material chasing, we have done all of that and find that doesn't give you the permanent satisfaction or soul satisfaction, or I use the word bliss also, that we are seeking for. So I think when you realize that you have to go for the, you have to bring in bhakti and you have to bring in the supreme into it, that is the motivation for us to even reflect on this process. Without that driving force of being drawn to the Almighty, it is difficult to objectively, academically reflect on the text that is given in BHAJAGOVINDAM, for example. If somebody says you must be detached, it's very difficult to be detached in this world unless there's a bigger driving force that, yes, I have a goal, and that goal has to be achieved in this lifetime. And that goal, with what will make you drive to examine these teachings and try and get the underlying meaning. In the relative world, if you just look at it, it might make, you might agree with it, but it really not absorb it. That's what I want. The goal and your drive to reach self-realization, or whatever your end goal in this lifetime you have defined for yourself, should be the motivation for you to examine and process these thoughts and take the this thing out of essence out of it.
Right. Thank you, Ji. Quickly, Hari Ji, I think we have just overshot. If you could quickly, Hari Ji.
Guruji, I just
Yeah.
wanted to, I was reminded of something which you said.
Harish Ji, 1 second, please. I think Hari Ji wanted to say something.
When we see Bhagavad Gita, it was Lord Krishna advised Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna not at a peaceful time when he was in the midst of a war where he was totally despondent. That is the time when he was advised Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna could come out of his confusion and despondency and could act.
Yeah.
So these are all meant for people like all of us who are in trouble and who are looking for solution. So it is not a theoretical knowledge, it is a very, very practical knowledge which can be implemented. And implementation need not be at an absolute level. From today, from tomorrow onwards, I will be like a realized soul. No, I can develop myself on stage wise. If I am 0 today, tomorrow I can be 5%, day after tomorrow 10%. So it is a stage-wise development. We should not get scared that we won't be able to reach the absolute level tomorrow. And nobody expects also. It is a stage-wise progress and development.
Wonderful, Ji. Thank you. Yes, Harish Ji, closing comments, please. Kindly unmute yourself, sir.
Guruji, I'm sorry, but we are very much out of time, but I just wanted to recall 2 things which you have said in earlier classes, which people can probably think about, right? One is that the solutions lie, or the solutions, the achievement of the objectives, ultimate objectives, lie not in thought and concept, but in action. So as long as we don't realize this and apply it into action, it will remain only knowledge. We can keep discussing and keep extending on this concept. But this was a very important thing which you said, that the entire journey is only completed by action and not by thought. The second thing is that when you talked about wife and child, one is though the person you look to for comfort, and the other is the person you think you are good enough to give comfort to. So it brings you to the concept that that you do have comfort outside you, and you can give comfort outside yourself, and takes you away from yourself to the outside, right? And the second part of that is that the very fact that you say that something outside can give me comfort, or I can give comfort to somebody outside me, shows that I have a lack which can be filled by somebody other than me. And that is, I think, something which we need to think about.
Absolutely, Ji. Wonderful. All right. Thank you. So we'll come back again.